Vayamutpad Paramahamsa Parivajakatarja Astatara Satyasi Srimad, His Divine Grace, is the Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Paramahamsa Parivajakatarja Astatara Satyasi Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Isthan Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopina Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Brihat Pradanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Shri Radha Shamasundara Ki Shri Radha Madhava Ki Gauranga Mahaprabhu Ki Srila Bhakti Vinoda Thakur Ki Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Vrajajanarandana Jasodanandana Vrajajanarandana Yamuna Tiravana Shadi. Yamuna Tiravana Shadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Adi. Jai Radha Madhava Kunjavi Adi. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Vrajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Tiravana Jadi Jamuna Tiravana Jadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Adi Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivadakarga Akhitarasa Angle is Bhakti with understanding and then Takoti Vaishnava Indiki, then Parajya Bhadra Kanti or Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Lots of festivals these days, one after the next, literally. So today's a festival. After another day's festival, after another day's festival. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his appearance day, as you see, there's the date, also early in the month of September, 1838, and till June 1914. He was a revolutionary pioneer in reviving Gaudiya Vaishnavism in particular. The history was that just prior to his time, the prominence, there were Vaishnava acharyas, but the prominence of Gaudiya Vaishnavism had significantly waned. Not only it had significantly waned, but because the prominence of pure Vaishnavism had waned, other forms of upper sampradayas had proliferated. And that was one of his 100 books, was describing those upper sampradayas. And then stating again the correct understanding of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. So restoring the purity and sanctity of our sampradaya. You owe a great deal of debt, and volumes and volumes. One of his principal methods was writing. Of course, speaking, because of his position, he was highly learned and a high court judge, and he was positioned to garner respect from his audiences, and he commanded that respect by his erudition and the purity of his message, because pure messages, two things. Pure messages ring true. At the same time, when one speaks something very clearly and very strongly, there's guaranteed going to be opposition, and it's sure enough there was opposition. Those upper sampradaya folks and the others, there's so many categories of others who weren't aligned at all with Lord Chaitanya, but they took exception. We'll hear some of that. He, different than what Srila Prabhupada did, Prabhupada did differently than what he did. He worshipped Gadadhar deities. Prabhupada emphasized Gaur-Nitai, with the purpose behind that emphasis was preaching the mission of Mahaprabhu that he entrusted to Nityananda and many others, and entrusted in turn to his followers, as did Bhakti Siddhanta. And the emphasis, not that Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was less of a preacher or less of a expanding the message widely personality, but he was particularly inclined to the esoteric parts of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, as Gadadhar Pandit manifested and exhibited and so forth. So these are these Gadadhar deities, very joyful dancing pose too. One of the things that he was known for is his being very regulated. It's a nice thing to be known for. And as you see, he was with the latest of, he had a pocket watch. Notice in his vest. And he kept track of time very particularly, very meticulously, because busy people have to do that. And he was a busy personality with his high court judge position and 10 children and meeting so many dignitaries. And they had to be very regulated. So here's, at least, I'm not sure this is his pocket watch, but it's a pocket watch, and it was not just fashionable, but practical. There's a nice description of one of the places that he was visiting. He heard from the local people that there was a ghost in a tree, and ghost worship was going on in the tree. So he instructed, have somebody sit under the tree and for 30 days recite Srimad Bhagavatam. And that was his solution to the ghost in the tree, the ghost worship of the ghost in the tree. At the end of the 30 days, the tree fell over. The ghost left, making a sound in the sky so people could know he's gone. Part of his duty when he became the High Court judge in Puri was to confront Bhishikasen. And Bhishikasen was a representative of one of these Apasampradaya people. And one of his practices was he was a mystic who gained mystic powers by great austerities. And one of his practices was he lived in a grove of trees outside of Puri, and he would conduct activities where he would invite people from Puri to come and take his association. He claimed that he was Bhagavan Mahavishnu. Now we hear Prabhupada speaking about people that would claim to be Bhagavan, and he was very explicit. He was Mahavishnu. And he had 2 avatar associates with him. And one of his practices was he had followers, many thousands of followers, and he was prone to fasting, and when he was fasting he would get powers, and so that was where his strength came from. And he was polluting ladies that would come to visit him. And it became known. And he was the magistrate, chief magistrate, judge, but not a police officer. So he asked the police, go and arrest him, bring him to court. They refused because he's too powerful. We're afraid. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur went. Many of you know the story. He went, and Bhishika Singh refused. So Bhakti Vinoda Thakur grabbed him by the arm and escorted him back to jail where he was waiting his trial. And he made some declaration, this is my legal, I'll go because it's my legal. Because Bhakti Vinoda Thakur didn't go alone, there were some persons with him. So he yielded. And as the trial was going on, he did another one of his fasting things, waiting for the trial, and the trial was going on. So people were very afraid. And he made the statement that I'll curse you to die. So what happened was one of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's daughters became feverish to the point of near death. So his wife requested him, please let him go, your daughter will die, and he refused to let the fellow go. And his daughter became well again, and he was found guilty. And I don't recall what the punishment was, but as they were going out of the courtroom, he had some assistants get a pair of big scissors and cut his hair, because it is said that a yogi kept his powers in his hair. I don't know how to do that, but that's what it said. And so he collapsed right in the courtroom. And, the point is, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur was fearless, because he knew that Bhagavan was the protector of his pure devotee, and this fellow is to be punished. It's my duty to bring justice. And so he did. Now, one of the early things that he did in the course of taking responsibility for the temple, for the court, was he was in charge of the temple. So one of the things he did with the temple, he checked the bookkeeping. And he found out that the king of the time had been embezzling money from the deity, 80,000 rupees. At that time, that's a lot of rupees. So he gave him a sentence that he had to sponsor the Sunday feast. Penalty. It was an honor. He had to sponsor the deity prashadam, deity boga, which is 52 times a day, until the debt was cleared. However, whatever that cost is for the deities, 52 times a day times however many days. And the Raja took exception. So what the king did was he engaged 50 pundits chanting mantras for 30 days with the intention at the end that his Bhakti Vinoda Thakur would die. So instead, at the end of the 30 days, the king's son died. The king had his experience. Because the nature of these kind of yagyas, if it's sent to someone that's ineffective, it goes back to the person who sent it. So his son died. And the king realized that I messed with the wrong person. There was another situation that evolved just to indicate his quality of fearlessness and dedication. He, as a high court judge, was very fond of Srimad Bhagavatam. So on a regular basis, he would go to Jagannath Ballabh Garden, which was his house was situated along Grand Road, and behind his house was part of this big forested area called Jagannath Ballabh Garden. And he would sit in the Jagannath Ballabh Garden and recite Bhagavatam, and persons would come. And there was a local Babaji who didn't like it. And so Raghunath Das Babaji, spoke against, not directly to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but people that would go and say, don't go, this fellow isn't qualified. And so don't go. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur continued anyways. And the Raghunath Das Babaji started to become very, very seriously ill with a fever. Bhaktivinoda Thakur heard about his fever, so he knew he was criticizing him, but he sent a message how his fever could be cured. Lord Jagannath appeared in Babaji's dream and told him to pray for the mercy of Bhaktivinoda if he wanted to be freed from certain death. And he was cured. And Raghunath Das Babaji came to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, confessed what he had done, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, I knew that you were doing this, but I didn't take exception, because... So then Raghunath Das explained, the reason I was criticizing you was you don't wear tilak, and you don't wear kuntimala, and how can you be a representative of the Bhagavatam without being a proper Vaishnava in this way? And Bhaktivinoda Thakur's reply was that I hadn't found my guru yet, my Diksha guru. I have all faith in the Bhagavatam, but in his time, neck beads and tilak were both given at the time of Diksha. So he wasn't wearing them because he didn't have Diksha Guru at that time. Now there's another Babaji. Apparently Babajis were popular with people during Bhaktivinoda Thakur's time. He kept his residence near the Tota Gopinath temple. Those of you who have been to Puri, you know where the Tota Gopinath temple is. It's a little remote from the temple itself, but it's a very nice place. And it's at the Bhajan Kutir of Sanatana Goswami. And he particularly appreciated Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he honored him because he was always absorbed in Bhagavad Gita and chanting Krishna's name. So he was a different flavor of Babaji. Now this is a current photograph. It's not that this is a photograph of the same Babaji. It's a nice, happy Babaji. So where he is. And he was, on the one hand and on the other hand, on the one hand, his life style and his liking for everything was quite simple. So his attire is often shown in that very simple cloth and so forth. But also because he had a government position, he would sometimes dress, in a fashionable way. Like in here he is using photography to take pictures of his attire. There he is with a nice fancy hat. And I don't know the circumstance of the photograph, but posing for a photograph for the worldly people. Here's another photograph of his big family. We often say he was the father of 10 children. So here they are. Way over on the upper left, that's Bhaktisiddhanta. and Bhagavati, that's his wife, next to him, and a lot of children, mostly boys and a few girls. He was reputed for his writing, and often when he would pose for formal portraits, photographed portraits, he would have books by his side or on his knee, or as part of the image. And of course, the bead bag and his books and his very prominent neck beads. Very important book in all of his 100 writings is this Jaiva Dharma. Jaiva Dharma is a retelling of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, very much wanted that that at least the educated people should become familiar with who is Lord Chaitanya, and in the proper way, not in the upper sampradaya way, because the upper sampradaya folks had brought ill repute, a bad reputation to Lord Chaitanya and the followers of Lord Chaitanya. So here he is, wishing very much that could be changed, and this book was part of that effort. The storyline is there's some Calcutta students that came to Navadvip, and they were curious little young men and adventure seekers, and in the course of going to Navadvip, they met one Babaji named Babaji Maharaj. This is a painting just meant to illustrate. So the two, they were asking questions. So it's a standard format, and who's the questioner is important, and who's the answer is even more important. And that's the format of Jaiva Dharma. So in various ways, he's giving the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As you all know, the very same year that Prabhupada was born, he, out of his own expense, he created this publication, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, His Life and Precepts, in English language. Most of what his writing was in Bengali, in the English language, and sent it around the world. And celebrated within ISKCON is that McGill University in Canada is a place where in the library a copy of this was found. And I happen to know there was another place in Southeast Asia. Gosh, I can't remember where it was, some university. So the inspiration of Bhakti Siddhanta came from the inspiration of his father, which of course came from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, but throughout the world, but specifically outside of India, people should know, and educated people should know. So this book had its purpose. As you see, the publishing was by the Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Math. That is, the book itself was reprinted at a later point in time by that Gaudiya Math version. And another very important book is Bhagavad Arkamrichi Mala. Bhagavad Arkamrichi Mala is a book that just takes the topics of the Bhagavatam, and he has extracted selected verses topic by topic. And at the end of the book, he writes that that Swarup Damodar came to him in person, instructed him, as the painting shows, from his heart to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's heart, to write this book, and gave him details how the book should be written. He gave him some explanation of 111 Bhagavatam, like a purport to the first verse of the Bhagavatam. And he writes that normally something like this is kept secret. It's not disclosed. but I feel compelled to write it because it's the reason why the book came into being. Bhagavad Arkamruchi Mala. And there's a very interesting autobiography, not just a biography about him, but this is the title of the autobiography, particularly his life while he was in Navadvip, or at least a prominent part of this, where this photograph is taken. You know, the palm trees and the whole foliage and everything is with one of his sons and another assistant. And it was in this biography he describes a vision on the Rani Dharmshala, which is a building in now Navadvip. He was looking across the river Jamuna, river Ganga, and he saw a big light rising in the sky, like a building. You know, the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. He took it. That was the vision. And others saw the vision. It happened a second night. So he started on the quest of what was that big building. And he did his reading and did his researching, and he looked at maps and so forth and so on. One of the things, because of his government post, he had access to materials that government keeps in coveted places. So like the library. And he saw from the maps that the course of the Ganges had shifted over time. And without all the details, there are details in his reasoning that what is today's Navadvip, which is on the western side of the river Ganges, always in the biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Bhagavat and Chaitanya Mangala and Chaitanya Charitamrita, the authors speak of Navadvip, or the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, being on the eastern side. So from looking at these maps, he found that shortly after the departure of Lord Chaitanya, the course of the Ganges shifted, as rivers do that sometimes. So it moved in such a manner that the birthplace of Mahaprabhu was underwater. And then, in course of time, it shifted back. Because this place, the town of Navadvip, was new, and the birthplace of Mahaprabhu was not new. So it's not the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. And to get confirmation, he requested Jagannath Das Babaji, and you know the history. Jagannath Das Babaji was so old, 130 years old is how long he lived. His body was infirm. This is the actual photograph, and this is a painting drawn from the photograph. And his assistant carried him in a basket. You know the whole story. And when he reached this site, Bhakti Thakur had gone to where he approximated where that vision of that tall building was, and he went to see if he could find, where that arose from. Anyway, he found that there was it was all rice fields, except one patch of land where it wouldn't grow anything except tulsis. So he thought maybe this is the place. So he brought Jagannath Das Babaji to the place, and he jumped out of the basket and declared again and again loudly, "This is it." So I consider it important that he took it upon himself to establish a temple. And the method that he used to establish the temple was to go door to door and ask people for 1 rupee. Any gentleman, Vaishnava, would give will give 1 rupee to help build a temple for the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. And doing that meant he's risking his life, because the people were in the place of Navadvip, which was known as the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, their livelihood was based upon people coming over there and finding the birthplace of Mahaprabhu that wasn't there. So someone that came along and said, it's not over here, it's over there, is risking his life. Because, it's just not a well-developed and sophisticated place at that time. So self-interested persons could easily make a plan to kill him. But he went anyways. And so once he built the building, that's this older building, that's the pink-colored building on the right, he requested his son, Bhakti Siddhanta, to build a proper temple. And so there's the proper temple. The design was indicated by Bhakti Siddhanta himself. And as they were digging into the ground to establish the foundation for the temple, lo and behold, they found this Shila. And Shila is now on the altar, but this was the deity that Jagannath Mishra worshipped. And because when the Ganges shifted, the birthplace of Mahaprabhu was now underwater, and when the Ganges shifted back, it's just in the mud somewhere. So when they excavated the foundation, they found the deity. The deity's on the altar. And of course, the Temple of Vedic Planetarium folks like to say that the tall tower that Bhakti Vinoda Thakur saw was the Temple of Vedic Planetarium, or at least the Temple of Vedic Planetarium is honoring that experience. And the place where he saw this from, Swananda Sukhada Kunj, is the name of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's home. This is in what's the name of the place? Surabhi Kunj? I mix up. Swananda Sukhada Kunj, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's home, Samadhi, and Bhajan Kutir. Yeah. And at his place, there's the front gate of the place, and at the place, Gorkishore Das Babaji also had a Bhajan Kutir. The island Godruma, just across the river from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance site. So that's where he established a place of residence. Yeah, it's one on the Sukhada Kunj, across the river from Mahaprabhu's appearance. My small cottage, we have some nice pictures. My small cottage is shining beautifully within that most enchanting garden called Swananda Sukhada Kunj. Living there, I will sing Lord Krishna's holy name, and I will greedily hanker for that time when I will get the service of him, Lord Krishna, and his associates. There's a verse from Gita Mala. Here's the entrance, and there's the entrance gate. You go inside the entrance gate, and there's where you find the Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's Bhajan Kutir. And over to the side, there's a Samadhi structure, with a nice clock on the wall. And Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's Murti. This is Swananda Sukhada Kunj. Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj had his Samadhi. It was there. He was a personal servant of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. Here's one of his Gaur Gatadhar deities. This is from a distance, and this is up close. Gaur Gatadhar deity. They're dressed in a different way in the next slide, but it's the same deity. Notice that the position of the hands, the mudra of Gadadhara's giving mercy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is with his finger raised, he's preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya, same deity. In his home, this is how, at least this, when these photographs were taken, this is the furniture that was in the room. This is his home, where he stayed. Very simple. And there's the bed with his mosquito net over on the side. There's with the mosquito net ready to drop down. And he had this little fan, not an electric fan, but it ran on kerosene, because in Bengal it sometimes gets very hot. And some of his books, and some of his personal belongings. Then another photograph of where he took rest. And a place when he would come to spend time with his father is a place where Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would sit and conduct his work. There's another photograph from a different angle. The Bhajan Kutir, the Samadhi is that dome structure at the far end. But you see everything is simple and very nice. Gorkishodas Babaji Bhajan Kutir. Small place. And inside, a photograph of him in his Bhajan Kutir. Now, this is what it looked like some years ago, and I don't know if everything's going to look the same today. But this is, if you visit, then it looks a little different. Don't be surprised, because they do renovation in these places regularly. And here's a lady just helping with some service there. Here's the Pushpa Samadhi areas for these two, Bhakti Vinoda and Bhakti Siddhanta. I don't know who the third is. Looks like somebody that may have been a follower of Bhakti Siddhanta, because it looks like a nice Bengali gentleman. This is the type of chair that Bhakti Siddhanta would use, with big arms, where he would sit and do whatever he did. This is his place where he would do his work, and where he had a little bed, looked like without a mosquito net, and his walking cane and shoes. Now in Jagannath Puri, there's a place called Bhakti Kuti. Bhakti Kuti. Now this is Prabhupada next to Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. That's because the ISKCON devotees arranged to secure the property where Bhakti Vinoda Thakur stayed, and they established a little place of worship, an ISKCON little preaching center, right in Puri. We're getting close to finish. This is a statement made by Sir William Duke. I'll just read. In Calcutta in 1908, 3 months before Bhakti Vinoda Thakur accepted the renounced order, Sir William Duke, Chief Secretary of Bengal, admitted that he had considered the Thakur's extraordinary abilities as district magistrate a threat to the British control. I wanted to take you out of office. I thought that for many men as qualified as you in Bengal, then the English would have to leave. But now he begged the Thakur's forgiveness. After hearing Sir William Duke's apology, the Thakur replied, I considered you to be a good friend and well-wisher all along. The Thakur admitted later to being astonished that this man had wanted to do him harm, but he was so pleased by his repentant attitude that he gave him all his blessings. So it's an actual photograph of an actual British ruling personality, Chief Secretary of Bengal. And here's another photograph of Bhakti Thakur in his retired age. Bhakti Thakur wrote this celebrated phrase. He reasons ill to say that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around. Happens to rhyme, it's nice sound and die and try. It's poetry. So that's our discussion for this morning. And that's our discussion for this morning. It's very close. This departure is very close to the Purnima, our celebrated Bhadra Purnima. And on Bhadra Purnima day, there's another great Vaishnava's appearance day, Haridas Thakur. So we'll hear something about him and more about Bhadra Purnima. Hare Krishna. My voice went away. I don't know what happened. Any discussion or comments?
Guru Maharaj, I'm linking what we heard today with what we were hearing yesterday in the Bhagavatam verse about occupational duties. And we see that in Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's case, he was in a very compromised situation of serving the British Raj, which had a pretty malicious intent within the country.
Benevolent but malicious at the same time.
And Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's choice was to continue to engage in the economic system, as well as engage with the world. How he would dress, and yet the lotus above the water not getting tainted. And then yesterday you had also mentioned the example of like the Amish people. We see the Amish and the Mennonites who have developed their own economic system so that they're not dependent and compromised like many of us in our occupational duties are. And we also see in Prabhupada's case, very much engaged with the world, just like Bhakti Vinoda Thakur in occupational duties as a Grihastha. And yet, Prabhupada said at the end of his life, 50% of my work is not done because I've not established Varnashrama. So I'm trying to just understand Prabhupada's mood in that sense, where the example that we are seeing is of, engagement within the economic models, and yet Prabhupada's 50% of the work is not done. I don't understand.
There's a lot of opinions, and and making any statement on this topic could be one of many opinions. And what does it mean? Because that's kind of what the question is. Was he recommending an Amish or Mennonite model for ISKCON? And I don't. There may be some devotees that have that view, but in simple language, he repeated the complexities are unnecessary. They're all artificial. That one can live by that which is produced naturally from the land. So it's like back to the land kind of a movement or the unfinished business. Rather than the complexities, the model of simple living, high thinking. The simple living, high thinking model doesn't encompass the mission. The missionary spirit is part of the mission. It's the model, but then it's, a little bit like to find examples that I'm aware of. There's probably multiple ones, but what Shiva Maharaj has done in Hungary and with the Govardhan Echo Village. While in Bombay, there's the Bombay, and then there's the Govardhan Echo Village, where it's it's the model, simple living, high thinking. Of course, it has its complexities, but the principle is directionally reducing the involvement in materialism of as a lifestyle or a means of maintenance, and living off the land by agriculture and cow protection, and being happy to live simply. Now, that as a model means people can come and see, kind of like what people do when they go to see the Amish people. It's just like going to visit a zoo and see the animals in their habitat. But obviously, it's more than that. It's a show by example. I'm saying this, and here's how it can be done. You can live your life like this instead of the complexities. So here it is. It's a model to see it can be done. So he wanted to show that. Prabhupada wanted to show that, along with the volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes of emphasis on the preaching mission and accepting things because it's for preaching, engaging, transportation, communication, all of what he did, riding airplanes and crossing the sea and doing things that are they're no-nos for a sannyasi. So he showed the example on that side, but he had not, to his satisfaction, shown the example on the other side. So it's an example. It's a model of, in principle, living in harmony with the laws of nature and living off the land for necessities of life. And being happy with the simplicity of living with the necessities of life only. Anything else? Yes, something else.
Guru Maharaj, when considering these three amazing personalities, Bhakti Vinoda Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada, my understanding is Srila Prabhupada was the perfect blend of the humble persuasion method of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur and the lion guru that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was. Prabhupada pulled on both these approaches at different times and just blended them very seamlessly to, just the right person at the right time. Like when we go Cardinal Daniel Yu, or when a disciple diverted from the path. I'm just wondering if you would agree with that.
Yeah, and it's coming up soon in Boston is the anniversary of Prabhupada's arrival in Boston Harbor. And there's going to be a festival talking about what you're asking. The glories of our founder Acharya and how he did this and that. And in such a miraculous way, and so effective way, and so forth. So for those that want to hear that message said, multiple times by multiple speakers, that's a good. I'm sure everything can be recorded. The contrast, just to say it again, the contrast between methodology of Bhakti Vinoda Thakur and the methodology of Bhaktisiddhanta is characteristically, at least, as you described it, humble persuasion, from within, transforming the intelligentsia and the accomplished people of during the British rule period, whether the British people or the indigenous people or a combination, but by humble persuasion. And Bhaktisiddhanta was confrontational. And Prabhupada did both, depending. So a perfect acharya can make that adjustment and understand what's appropriate in this circumstance or that one. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I just wanted to express my heartfelt appreciation for Bhakti Vinoda Thakur's songs. I mean, it describes that jiva soul in so many ways. I mean, it's such a dirty mind, so pitiable, so dark. And that is a very nice exposure for me to relate to. And I really appreciate his repeated, this thing, showing it, exposing that jiva soul in his poems.
He was fearless.
Thank you very much.
And in that sense, confrontational. But he did even the confrontational in a gentle manner, not in an abrupt manner. Okay, we'll end Srila Prabhupada.